Ready for a wild ride? Dive into history's 10 most brutal punishments, from rat attacks to being forgotten in a dungeon. Picture yourself chained in pitch-black darkness, deep under the Tower of London, where no light ever reaches. Welcome to the Rat Dungeon, number 10 on our list of history's most brutal punishments. In medieval England, this was the nightmare that made even the toughest criminals quake. Prisoners were bound tight, unable to move, in a damp cell linked to the nearby River Thames. When the tide rose, river water flooded in, flushing starving rats out of their nests. These frenzied, angry rodents swam straight into the dungeon, with one target, the helpless prisoner. You'd see nothing, just hear the skittering of tiny feet, then hundreds of rats swarming, biting chunks of flesh. A prisoner might fight them off for hours, but exhaustion would win. When they woke, their body was riddled with bites. This torture could last days or weeks, depending on the crime. By the late Middle Ages, it became a death sentence, tossing prisoners in and leaving them to the rats. Horrifying, right? Get ready for number 9, the rack, the Tower of London's infamous torture machine and a medieval nightmare. Prisoners, usually criminals, slaves, or POWs, were tied by their wrists and ankles to a pulley system on a giant ladder. Two burly guards would slowly crank the ropes, stretching shoulders, hips, knees, and elbows to the breaking point. The goal? Force a confession, true or not. Many blurted out lies to escape, but if caught fibbing, the torture got worse. When it was over, prisoners often had dislocated joints or were fully paralyzed. Take an Askew, a 25-year-old in 1447, tortured for hours for reading the Bible and preaching to friends. Result? Every joint popped, totally paralyzed, then carried to a chair to be burned alive. Her crime? Refusing to snitch on her pals. Back then, if you weren't Catholic, you kept quiet, or even your husband might rat you out. Brutal, but it shows history's dark side. Number 8 on our gruesome list, keelhauling. This brutal punishment hit sailors who stole or fought on board, and it usually ended in death. Picture this. You're tied up with ropes around your arms, looped around the ship, then secured at your feet. Next, you're tossed into the sea while the crew yanks the rope, dragging you across the ship's barnacle-crusted hull. That's where keelhauling gets its name. The keel's the roughest part of the ship. You might drown, snap your neck, or get sliced to bits like a cheese grater. If you miraculously survived round 1, 3 fates awaited, round 2, certain death. Released but dying slowly from infections, or living on, scarred head to toe, mocked for life. This wasn't just torture, it was a bloody warning to any sailor breaking the rules. Horrific, but that was the grim reality of the high seas. Number 7, crushed by elephants, a punishment that'll make your skin crawl. In 19th century India, this was a savage way to deal with criminals. Skip taxes. Steal. An enemy. You might get pancaked by an elephant. Picture a massive beast, guided by a rider, stomping you flat. 3 methods. 1, your head crushed like a grape underfoot. 2, the elephant walks over you, smashing limbs, sometimes needing multiple passes. 3, the cruelest, it crushes each limb slowly, then gores you with its tusks, finishing with a head-smashing blow. Worse, the 4th Mughal emperor once ordered mass crushings just because he was bored. Missed taxes. Crushed. Stole an apple. Crushed. Crossed the street. Crushed. A guy who killed and made soup from his neighbor. Fine, his soup was tasty. This wasn't just punishment, it was a power flex. Insane, but that's history. Number 6, impalement, a punishment that'll make your stomach churn. In 17th century Egypt, this was the go-to for highway robbers, grave thieves, or rebels. Prisoners were laid face down, hands tied behind, then sliced open at the back with a razor. The wound was slathered with a cream to stop bleeding instantly, but that's not the worst part. A wooden stake, thick as an arm and sharpened at one end, was lubricated and driven into the body, hammered deeper with a mallet. The stake would pierce through, sometimes exiting the shoulder, head, or mouth. The prisoner was long dead by then. The body was propped up by a busy road like a gruesome Halloween prop, warning everyone what happens when you break the law. Sometimes, the stake was shallow enough to keep them alive, suffering for hours, begging passers-by for help. Sick stuff, but that's how they kept order back then. History's brutal. Number 5, Pena Culiae, a punishment so bizarre you won't believe it. In 2nd century Rome and 18th century Germany, this was the fate for family murderers. The killer was stuffed into a thick leather sack, but they didn't go alone. They'd toss in a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey for company. Poor animals, but at least the murderer wasn't lonely. The sack was sewn shut, nearly airtight, then thrown into the sea. Not gruesome enough? Some got a choice, the sack or the Roman Colosseum, where beasts tore them apart in front of a crowd. Imagine being trapped with a biting snake, a clawing monkey, and a barking dog as water seeps in. It's a suffocating, chaotic, and totally insane death. This punishment was a twisted reminder: kill your family, you go out with an animal party. History's absolutely wild. Number 4, rat torture, a sick punishment that'll make you squirm. First seen in 1568 during the 80 Years' War, Dutch leader Diederik Sonoy used this to break prisoners. A rat was trapped in a clay bowl, placed upside down on a prisoner's stomach, chest, or face. Then they'd heat the bowl with a torch, driving the rat into a frenzy, burrowing into the body to escape. It gnawed, clawed, and tore through anything in its path, seeking a way out. The prisoner? No chance of survival. But it gets worse. In Pinochet's Chile, 1976 to 1983, they used the rectoscope. A tube was placed at the prisoner's rear, a rat shoved inside, letting it dig deep. Horrifyingly, they'd interrogate prisoners during this. No one knows how many died, but tons disappeared under that regime. This is peak cruelty, making you wonder what humans were thinking. History's straight up terrifying. Number 3, gibbeting, a punishment that made whole towns gag. Used in England, the US, and Afghanistan into the early 1900s, this was for traitors, pirates, and murderers. Criminals were locked in steel cages molded to their bodies, unable to move, hoisted 30 feet above streets or harbors. In England post-1752, a law mandated murderers face gibbeting or public dissection. 134 met this fate. The cages were so tight you could only stand, thirsting, starving, begging passers-by. The worst part? Bodies were left to rot for years, the stench so bad locals couldn't sleep. Some cages hung for over 20 years before cleanup. In 17th century Boston, pirates were gibbeted at the harbor as a warning. National Geographic in 1921 published photos of Afghan gibbets, shocking the world. This wasn't just torture, it was a message: break the law, your public decor. History's straight up cruel. Number 2, scaphism, a punishment that'll make you scream. In ancient Persia, murderers were tied inside a boat, limbs sticking out, in a lake. They were force-fed honey and milk until their stomachs burst, causing brutal diarrhea. Then, their bodies were slathered with more honey and milk, attracting insects, bees, flies, and rats. Pushed to the lake center under scorching sun, prisoners endured bugs gnawing all night. Each morning, they got more food and another slather of the deadly lotion. The diarrhea-honey mix drew insects that burrowed deep, especially through the rear. Writer Jonas Sonaras described a guy surviving 17 days, face swarmed by wasps, flesh rotting, crawling with maggots. This was a slow, agonizing death, lasting weeks. Persia used it to ensure max suffering. History's straight up a nightmare. Number 1, the oubliette, the most terrifying punishment. Oubliette means to forget in French, and that's exactly what happened. Used in the Tower of London and castles across Europe, like Warwick, these were tiny, pitch-black stone cells. Prisoners were tossed in, unable to sit, stand, or lie comfortably, left to die of thirst or starvation. The tower's little ease was insanely cramped. But the horror? Cells were often crawling with human-eating rats and rotting corpses from past inmates. In 1900, at Ireland's Leap Castle, workers found a pit stuffed with dozens of skeletons, needing multiple carts to clear. Some were kept alive with scraps, suffering for years, hearing laughter outside but never escaping. The oubliette was cruelty's peak, throwing you into darkness and erasing you from the world. History's a straight-up nightmare. And that's a wrap on the 10 most horrifying punishments in history. from rat attacks to being forgotten in a dungeon. These stories don't just creep you out, they show how brutal humans can be. Why are we hooked on this grim stuff? It's a peek into history's dark side and human nature, creative yet terrifying. From stakes through bodies to bug-filled boats, each punishment screams a lesson: power, order, and revenge can get wild. What's your take? Which one shocked you most? Drop your thoughts below and come back for more insane history secrets. Thanks for riding along. Now go cleanse your brain after this nightmare.